Dr. Nadia Ilmar had always been a woman of reason. As a diplomat and xenobiologist stationed aboard the Solace, a massive human flagship on the outer rim of human-colonized space, she spent most of her life negotiating with alien species. Her job was simple, or so it seemed: keep the peace, make alliances, and ensure humanity's place in the galaxy. But over the years, her optimism began to fade. Diplomacy, she realized, was a dance built on fear and power, not trust or mutual respect. The other species feared humanity's rise, not because humans were superior, but because they were unpredictable and ambitious. It wasn't an ideal world, but it was the world she had to work within. For Nadia, the excitement of new discoveries had long worn thin. Instead of uncovering new alien species, she was often bogged down with bureaucratic negotiations and endless talks about trade routes or minor territorial disputes. Each meeting, each mission, felt like a never-ending cycle of hollow gestures. But all of that was about to change. IT started with an innocuous mission, just another routine survey of a dead zone in space. The dead zones were areas where nothing seemed to exist: no stars, no planets, no life. They were considered voids in the universe, places that had been abandoned by time and the cosmos itself. As boring as it seemed, Nadia had to keep up with these tasks to maintain her status. But as her ship, the Solace, glided through the void, something caught her attention. A faint signal, barely detectable, yet unmistakable. A distress call. It wasn't unusual to pick up stray signals in deep space. But this one was different. It wasn't just the usual call for help, but a cryptic message, a plea for humanity to wake up. The voice was distorted and erratic, but there was one phrase that Nadia couldn't shake off. "We found it, don't let them get it, they can't have it." Then, silence. The coordinates of the call led Nadia and the Solace into uncharted territory, far beyond the reach of any known human colonies. The message was coming from a human colony that had been lost to history. Nadia knew the colony's name from old records: Horizon Station. A small outpost set up decades ago, it had disappeared from all communication channels without a trace. The fact that there was a distress call coming from there, especially after so long, sent a cold chill down her spine. She presented the discovery to her commanding officer, Captain Elias de Vries, who agreed to investigate. A fleet of ships was quickly assembled to search the area. When they arrived, however, they found nothing like they had expected. Instead of a thriving, though forgotten, outpost, they encountered only a desolate, lifeless station. It was as if the entire colony had vanished overnight. The station was a haunting sight. Its metallic walls were scarred, riddled with holes, and the once glowing lights now flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows across the abandoned halls. Nadia stepped off the shuttle, the weight of silence pressing down on her. There were no bodies, no signs of a struggle, just emptiness. Her team split up to explore the station. Nadia's hands shook as she activated the station's systems, trying to get any information. As she walked through the dusty corridors, she found the remnants of everyday life: an old dinner table, half-finished meals, and personal belongings hastily left behind. Yet no bodies, no survivors, just the lingering remnants of a life abandoned in fear. Then she found IT.in, the central chamber of the station. Hidden deep beneath layers of protective security lay a strange object. It looked like nothing Nadia had ever seen before. The object was an artifact, its surface covered in intricate alien symbols that seemed to shimmer and shift the moment her eyes locked onto them. It pulsed with an unnatural energy, and as Nadia approached it, the air around the artifact was thick, almost suffocating, and the closer she got, the more her mind felt clouded. When Nadia touched the artifact, memories, or perhaps hallucinations, flooded her mind. Visions of strange alien landscapes and bizarre creatures danced before her eyes, and she heard whispers, voices speaking in a language she couldn't understand. The alien symbols twisted and turned before her, as if alive. She had barely pulled her hand away when a low hum filled the room, as if the artifact itself had awoken. It was then that the truth hit her like a freight train. The artifact was not just some relic of a long-forgotten civilization. It was a weapon, or something far worse. Its power was ancient, its origins unfathomable, and whoever had come in contact with it before had been driven mad, their minds shattered by the overwhelming force it contained. The humans who had once lived on Horizon Station had found it, and in their desperation, they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. Nadia's mind raced as she pieced together the puzzle. The distress call wasn't just a cry for help, it was a warning. A warning that whatever this artifact was, it needed to be kept hidden, buried, and left untouched. But now, it was too late. The artifact was active, and whatever it was calling to something or someone. The chilling realization settled in. The Horizon Station had vanished because of this very artifact. But even worse, the alien races who had once tried to avoid it were now aware of its activation. They, too, feared what it could unleash. Nadia had no idea what kind of power this artifact represented, but she did know one thing for certain: it was something that not even the most advanced alien species dared to face. As the first tremors of the coming storm began to shake the station, Nadia realized that the galaxy was about to change forever. And humanity, the species the galaxy had so long underestimated, might be the one to change it. Dr. Nadia Ilmar had hoped that once she returned to human space with the news of her discovery, the truth about the artifact would be enough to compel immediate action. But to her shock and growing frustration, her warnings were dismissed. The high-ranking officials back on Earth, along with the military and diplomatic corps, saw her findings as nothing more than an overreaction, the ramblings of a scientist who had spent too much time in deep space. They insisted that the Solace crew had misinterpreted the data, and the distress call was nothing but a glitch, an old corrupted signal from the past. Despite her best efforts, Nadia could not convince her superiors that the artifact was something far more dangerous than a mere relic. They even suggested that she might have been affected by its influence, as if her mind had been compromised by the very thing she had discovered. Her credibility was being slowly chipped away, and Nadia found herself isolated within the corridors of power, fighting a losing battle against bureaucracy. But while the humans dismissed her findings, the universe didn't. Nadia's discovery quickly rippled through the galaxy, reaching the ears of the other powers. Rumors of the artifact, a weapon unlike any the galaxy had seen, spread like wildfire. And before long, various factions began to converge on the Lost Horizon Station. Each had its own agenda. Some sought to destroy the artifact, fearing its potential. Others, more dangerously, saw it as an opportunity to enhance their own power. The first to arrive were the Exether, an ancient, enigmatic race whose motives were as inscrutable as their highly advanced technology. They had never shown much interest in human affairs, often remaining on the periphery of galactic politics. Yet now, they were the first to propose an alliance with humanity, one that would give both sides shared control over the artifact. But the Exether's offer wasn't without conditions, and their intentions were far from clear. Nadia's heart sank when she saw the Exether emissaries. They were humanoid in shape, but their appearance was unnerving. Long, elegant limbs, thin, almost translucent skin, and faces that seemed to shift subtly with every glance. Their presence in the meeting room was cold, their eyes unreadable, and the silence they maintained was far more intimidating than any words could have been. The leader of the Exether delegation, an individual known only as TVR, spoke in the smooth, lilting tones of a being that had long outlasted the idea of time as humans understood it. "We have watched humanity for centuries. Your potential is both a blessing and a curse," TVR said. "The artifact you have uncovered is a key to an ancient power. You may not understand it fully yet. You would do well to accept our guidance." Nadia, still shaken by the magnitude of her discovery, hesitated. "You want to share governance of the artifact?" she asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Why? What's in it for you?" TVR's eyes flickered. "We seek only balance. Too many civilizations have sought this power and been undone by it. We do not wish humanity to repeat their mistakes. Your species may rise or fall, but we prefer it to be on our terms." The message was clear. Humanity could not be trusted to control the artifact alone. The Exether seemed to believe that they were the only species capable of managing the immense responsibility it held. To Nadia, It felt like another layer of a grand, tangled political game. The Exether were not the benevolent, wise species they portrayed themselves to be. They were calculating and manipulative, offering an alliance that would only serve their own interests. But even as the Exether played their hand, other factions arrived, each with its own designs on the artifact. The Sorokians, a militaristic species with a reputation for ruthlessness, arrived with an armada of warships. They demanded the immediate destruction of the artifact, fearing that its power would tilt the balance of power in the galaxy too far in humanity's favor. On the opposite side of the spectrum, the Eldari, a more spiritual and pacifistic race, believed that the artifact could be used to usher in a new era of enlightenment. They proposed that humanity join them in a peaceful, collective effort to study and understand it, hoping that knowledge alone would provide the answers. As Nadia found herself drawn deeper into the web of competing interests, she began to realize just how little control humanity had over its own fate. The artifact had become a political chessboard, with each faction maneuvering for an advantage. But what none of them knew, what no one knew, was what the artifact could actually do. And that uncertainty made everyone dangerously unpredictable. The situation grew more complicated with each passing day. Nadia found herself in a delicate dance of alliances, trying to balance the needs of her own people while avoiding being manipulated by the alien powers. And through it all, her relationship with her old friend, Captain Elias de Vries, began to unravel. Elias had always been her rock, her partner in both science and diplomacy. They had shared countless discussions, dreams of a peaceful galaxy, and a hope that humanity would one day find its place among the stars. But now, with the discovery of the artifact, things were changing. Elias, once a firm believer in Nadia's abilities and convictions, began to question her judgment. "You're letting this artifact cloud your judgment, Nadia," Elias said one evening, his voice tight with frustration. "We've been given a chance to prove ourselves to the galaxy. We need to show that humanity can rise above this mess and come out on top. But instead, you're making us look weak, paranoid even." Nadia's eyes narrowed. "You think this is about pride? This is about survival. This artifact is dangerous, Elias. The other factions can't be trusted, and we can't let them control it." Elias didn't respond right away. He just stared at her, as if trying to make sense of the woman she had become. "I'm not sure you even know what you're asking us to do anymore," he said quietly. "Maybe you've lost sight of what we're really fighting for." The words stung. Nadia had always trusted Elias, but now, as the political stakes rose and the artifact's influence seeped deeper into their lives, she wasn't sure who her true allies were anymore. The final blow came when a high-ranking officer within the human fleet, one who had secretly opposed Nadia's warnings, betrayed her completely. The officer, in a well-timed move, aligned himself with the Sorokians, sabotaging the Solace's communications array just as a crucial diplomatic meeting was taking place. The chaos that followed nearly destroyed any chance of negotiating with the Exether, and in the wake of the betrayal, Nadia's position within the fleet became increasingly untenable. Now, with her allies fractured and her enemies closing in from all sides, Nadia was forced to confront the harsh truth: the artifact was no longer just a discovery. It was a force that would reshape everything, and humanity was standing at the edge of a precipice, unsure whether it could even survive the fall. And as the galaxy's most powerful factions circled like vultures, Nadia knew one thing: the coming storm would change everything, but she had no idea who would be left standing when it was over. Nadia's mind raced as she pieced together the history of the artifact. She had already learned more than she had ever expected, but the deeper she delved, the more terrifying the truth became. She had thought humanity's discovery of the artifact was unique, a singular event that had the potential to reshape the future. But as she continued to explore the hidden archives and examine the ancient texts that had once been locked away in the vaults of the Solace, a horrifying revelation dawned upon her. Humanity wasn't the first to discover the artifact. Not by a long shot. The artifact, it turned out, was no isolated anomaly. It was part of a much larger, far more dangerous system that spanned across the galaxy. It was a key to an ancient machine, one so vast and so powerful that it was said to control the very fabric of space and time itself. And the most terrifying part? This machine was the cause of the rise and fall of civilizations throughout history. It had been activated over and over again, each time by a different race, each time with catastrophic consequences. For millennia, entire galactic cycles had been shaped by this repeating pattern. One civilization would discover the artifact, gain access to the machine, and attempt to wield its power. But no matter what they tried, the result was always the same: wars, destruction, and the eventual collapse of their empire. The artifact's power was too great, its influence too overwhelming. Every time a new race reached for it, they became a part of the same doomed cycle of galactic rebirth and ruin. Nadia's heart sank as she realized that humanity was not a new player in the galaxy's history. No, humanity was something far more troubling, an anomaly, a race destined to trigger yet another fall. For some ancient powers, specifically the Exeter, humanity wasn't the dawn of a new age. It was the recurring spark that would bring everything crashing down. As this truth settled in, Nadia found herself at a crossroads. What had once seemed like a chance for humanity to step into the galaxy's spotlight had now become a bitter realization. The artifact, in all its mystery and power, wasn't a gift, it was a curse. Humanity, like so many before them, was on the brink of repeating a cycle of destruction, unable to escape the very pattern they had discovered. But things weren't as simple as merely accepting this fate. There were others who disagreed with the Exeter's view, and Nadia was about to learn just how far the influence of the artifact reached. As Nadia continued her research, an unsettling truth emerged: a faction of humans, deeply influenced by the artifact's power, had begun to advocate for its activation. These individuals believed that humanity wasn't bound to the same tragic fate as the civilizations before them. They saw the machine as a tool that could rewrite the rules of the universe, break the endless cycle, and finally allow humanity to rise above the chaos of the past. They called themselves the Ascendants, a radical group that had infiltrated both the military and political circles of humanity's power structure. They believed that the artifact represented a new era, one in which humanity would not fall like the others, but would instead rise to master the very forces of time and space. They argued that only by activating the artifact could humanity reshape the galaxy and break free from the patterns that had entrapped countless species before them. The idea of activating the artifact, of taking control of its power, was intoxicating to some. Humanity could become masters of the universe. They could reshape time itself, alter the course of history, and undo the mistakes of the past. To the Ascendants, it was a chance to seize their destiny, to become more than just a fleeting civilization among the stars. It was an opportunity to break free from the cosmic cycle and to create a future on their own terms. But Nadia saw the dangers clearly. If the Ascendants succeeded, humanity would be no different than the countless civilizations before them bent on using the artifact's power for their own gain. The result would be catastrophic. They would become part of the endless cycle, destined to fall as every other civilization had. She couldn't let that happen, no matter the cost. Her emotions were torn. Nadia had spent her life fighting for humanity's place in the galaxy, pushing for peace, cooperation, and understanding. But now, she had to make a decision that would test everything she had ever believed. To destroy the artifact and stop the Ascendants meant accepting that humanity might never escape the cycle. It meant abandoning the hope of rewriting the universe, accepting the limitations of the present, and preserving a galaxy that was broken beyond repair. But to embrace the Ascendant's vision, to allow the artifact to be activated, would mean risking everything. The stakes had never been higher. And then there was the Exeter. They were ancient, wise, and, in many ways, terrifying. They had spent millennia trying to prevent the activation of the artifact, knowing full well that it was the key to the universe-spanning machine that would rewrite everything: time, space, and reality itself. They had seen what happened when the artifact was activated, and they were determined to stop it from happening again. But their motives were unclear. Did they truly want to protect the galaxy from this cataclysmic event, or were they simply trying to preserve their own place in the galaxy's current order? The Exeter were not allies to humanity. They were pragmatic, cold, and calculating. And in the end, they might prove just as dangerous as the Ascendants. Nadia stood in the silence of her private quarters, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The weight of the decision pressed on her shoulders. Could humanity truly rise above the mistakes of the past? Was it possible to rewrite the future, to break free from the endless cycle of destruction? Her thoughts were interrupted by a voice from the doorway. Captain Elias de Vries stood there, his expression unreadable. The tension between them had only grown since the discovery of the artifact, and now, it seemed, they stood on the brink of a decision that would shape the future of humanity. "Nadia," Elias said softly, his tone betraying the exhaustion in his voice. "You don't have to carry this alone. We can make this decision together." But Nadia knew the truth. This wasn't a decision that could be made by anyone else. It had to be hers. And no matter what path she chose, she knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. Her hand hovered over the comm panel, ready to send a message to the fleet ready to make her choice. Would she destroy the artifact and preserve the status quo, or would she risk everything in the hope that humanity could transcend the cycle and forge a new path? The future of the galaxy depended on the answer, and Nadia was the only one who could provide it. The weight of that responsibility felt unbearable, but as she looked out at the stars, Nadia knew one thing: the time to act was coming, and soon the universe would change forever. The tension in the control room was unbearable. The air was thick with anticipation as Nadia stood before the artifact, the decision that had plagued her for so long now upon her. Captain Elias de Vries stood by her side, his once unwavering loyalty to her now strained by the tumultuous journey they had shared. Allies, enemies, and factions were all watching, waiting for Nadia to make the final choice that would determine not only humanity's future, but the fate of the galaxy itself. Nadia's heart raced, but she knew the choice was inevitable. The artifact was the key to everything. She could no longer deny it. Despite the dangers, despite the uncertainty, humanity had always risen from the ashes of past civilizations. She believed she had to believe that humanity could wield this power responsibly. The galaxy had suffered under the old cycle, and perhaps it was time to break free from the endless war, from the endless fall. "I'm doing it," Nadia said, her voice firm but laced with the tremor of doubt. Elias stepped closer, his eyes filled with concern. "Nadia, think about this. Once we do this, there's no going back. You're playing with forces beyond our understanding." Nadia nodded, her hand hovering over the activation panel. She had heard the arguments, felt the weight of every voice that had tried to sway her from this decision. But she could see no other choice. This was the only path that could lead humanity to a future untainted by the past. With a deep breath, she pressed the button. The moment the artifact activated, a shockwave of pure energy blasted outwards, rippling across the fabric of reality itself. The stars outside the observation window seemed to warp and twist, like threads of light being pulled in every direction. Nadia's eyes widened as the very laws of physics began to unravel before her. Time and space collapsed into a swirling vortex, a kaleidoscope of colors and energies that defied all comprehension. The power that surged through her was indescribable. It was both beautiful and terrifying, an overwhelming sense of creation, of destruction, and something beyond both. For a brief moment, she could feel the pulse of the universe, the heartbeat of existence itself. And in that moment, Nadia realized something that shook her to the core. Humanity was never meant to control this power. The artifact wasn't a tool for civilization's advancement, it was a catalyst. It wasn't about who could wield the power. It was about the transformation that came when that power was released. Humanity wasn't meant to rise above the galaxy. Humanity was meant to serve as the spark for something greater. This wasn't just about rewriting history, it was about rewriting existence. The universe began to twist in ways that were beyond Nadia's comprehension. Reality fractured, like glass shattering under the force of a cosmic impact. The stars blurred and stretched, bending into impossible shapes as the very fabric of the cosmos was reconfigured. Nadia's mind struggled to keep up with the unfolding chaos. Was this what the X-Ether had feared? Was this the end they had been trying to prevent? As the waves of energy spread across the galaxy, Nadia felt the bond she had with her crew, with Elias, start to slip away. The space they were in, the time they had known, was no longer the same. It was as if the universe was becoming a living entity, and humanity was no longer its center. They were simply a catalyst for this grand metamorphosis. Elias's voice broke through the madness. "Nadia!" he cried, his voice filled with panic. "What have you done? What's happening?" But it was too late. Nadia could no longer hear him clearly, as if his words were being lost in the distortion of reality itself. Her vision blurred, and for a moment, she wasn't sure if she was still in her body or if she was simply part of the cosmic upheaval. Then, the energy reached its peak. In a final burst of blinding light, the universe seemed to exhale, and everything stopped. The stars settled into new positions. The fabric of reality solidified once more, but it was different. Everything was different. The galaxies were no longer the same. The laws of physics had altered. The constants that had governed the universe for eons now twisted into new forms. Humanity stood at the heart of this new universe, but in a way they could never have imagined. As the dust of this new reality began to settle, Nadia, still standing in the control room, took in the changes. She saw the stars in patterns she didn't recognize, constellations that had never existed. The cosmos was unrecognizable, reshaped by the very forces they had unleashed. Humanity was now at the center of this vast new universe, but they were no longer just a part of it. They had become a force, perhaps the dominant force, but at what cost? The crew that had stood by her side was gone. Some had been lost in the upheaval, their bodies or minds consumed by the transformation. Others had evolved into new forms, their consciousnesses melding with the fabric of this new universe. The solace had been ripped apart by the energy of the artifact's activation. Nadia felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. She had made the choice. She'd believed that humanity could wield this power, could rise above the cycle of destruction. But now, she wasn't sure. Some part of her wondered if they had become something other than human in the process. The cost of their transformation was far beyond anything she'd anticipated. Was this the ultimate victory for humanity? Or had they crossed a line they could never return from? Nadia stood in the silence of the control room, her thoughts heavy with the weight of the consequences. The new galaxy stretched before her, a canvas for the human race to paint on. Yes, but at what price? There was beauty in the transformation, a raw potential for what could come next. But there was also terror in the unknown, in the possibilities that lay in the wake of their actions. As she looked out into the vast, altered expanse, Nadia wondered if humanity would truly be able to adapt to this new reality. Would they rise to the challenge, or would they crumble under the weight of their own creation? And as the stars flickered in the distance, a lingering question echoed in her mind. What does it mean to be truly human in a universe where everything is mutable? Humanity had been given the keys to the cosmos, but would they be able to unlock the door, or would they be swallowed whole by the very power they had unleashed? The question remained unanswered, lingering in the silence of the new universe as Nadia stood alone, watching the dawn of a new era unfold.